Howdy ho, neighbors. I'd like to welcome you all to another installment of the Beaver County Unitarian Universalist Community Virtual Sermon. I've been thinking a lot lately about how important and how scary it is for some of us to get into difficult conversations. So I thought I'd take a few minutes and chat with y'all about that a little bit. If you want to keep informed about news and upcoming events with BCUU, check out our Facebook page, which I'll link to in the comments. We meet in person at Studio H in Monaca on the first and third Sundays of the month. And I want to take a minute to give a hearty shout out to Kelly at Studio H, who has been so helpful and hospitable to us. Also, I ask that you consider contributing to the life and growth of this self-sustaining community. If it's within your means to do so, we would be so grateful for any financial assistance you could provide. Now, I'll drop a link to PayPal in the comments. The link goes to Allegheny Unitarian Universalist Church, but they're our fiscal sponsor, so it's okay. Just please be sure to put a short note that your contribution should go to BCUU. And without further ado, let's finish up with the business and get on with the show. This opening reading is from James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Why don't you guys do something? When being dragged out of the Stonewall Inn by police 50 years ago, Storm DeLavia yelled, "Why don't you guys do something?" to the crowd of onlookers. This and the Stonewall riots that followed were pivotal moments in the fight for the rights of the LGBTQ community that continues today. So yeah, those are some pretty big shoes to fill. Whenever I start to think about what I can do to help change the world, my mind tends to wander and goes right to the biggest, baddest revolutionaries that I can think of. Dr. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Storm DeLavia, and I get overwhelmed and I think there's no way I can fill those shoes. And then I stop and I think to myself, well, I don't really necessarily need to fill those shoes. Because the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. Edmund Burke reminds us that we don't have to do all of the things, but we do need to do something. Something. Now that's a big word. And do, even though it's got fewer letters, it is a much bigger and infinitely scarier word. When we think of doing something important, some of us, including myself, tend to go right to the farthest extreme. And we get overwhelmed. But we don't have to get out there and scream in the faces of the opposition. If that's what you're comfortable with, great. But not all of us are meant to stand in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square. Not all of us have it within ourselves to block Fort Pitt Boulevard to welcome our president, knowing full well that they were going to get arrested. A few years ago, an organizer friend of mine and I were talking about this, and she told me, you know what? We always need someone to take pictures. We always need someone to make signs or handle the Facebook page. We need you to vote from your heart and from your conscience. We just need you to do your best, whatever that may be. Maybe the best that you can do is just to send a check. Maybe the extent of what you can do today is just to click like and share. Something. Anything. And one of the most painful, but one of the most important things that we can do when we see something that we know needs to be fixed is to talk about it. And when I say talk, I mean an actual face-to-face conversation. Most of us have lost and are losing more and more every day the knack for looking one another in the eye and having a discussion with them. It's so much easier for us to type a few sentences and hit enter, and oftentimes not worry in the least about the devastation we've unleashed by doing so. We lose so much in translation when we communicate this way. We lose all of the subtle nuances, the facial and bodily signals, and so much more when we're talking to each other through the cloud. And until such time as they invent a font for sarcasm, there is so much potential for harm when we don't take the time to sit down with each other. This is so essential to maintaining the connections that we need to strengthen the community that is so necessary to build a better world. When we sever those connections, or severely corrode them like we do with online communication, we're weakening the infrastructure of the new beloved global family we're trying to create. I have a good friend who lives in Montana. She's one of the kindest, most loving, and compassionate people that I know. And at the same time, she will take absolutely no ish from anyone when it comes to living her truth. She's always posting things about systemic racism or Planned Parenthood or whatever, things that are sure to upset somebody's apple cart. And every time I see one of these, a little mental timer in my head starts ticking. 3, 2, 1, and here come the trolls. When I originally started observing this phenomenon, I didn't fully appreciate what she was doing. I'd ask her why she would incite or incur the wrath of the faceless hordes, especially the ones that are clearly beyond the point where they could be brought back from the dark side. Her answer to me is that no one is going to stop her from speaking and being her true self. The reactions to her posts range from crude to sarcastic and everywhere in between, and she always comes back at them from a place of love and hope for their redemption. And I marvel at her lack of fear in dealing with people outside of her social media echo chamber. Personally, over the last few years, I've deleted a lot of people from my friends list. People that I have deemed toxic in some way or another. I've done this for my own personal balance, understanding that having them in my life is corrosive to my emotional and mental well-being. Having said that, sometimes I do sort of wish I would have kept some of my opponents in my back pocket, like my friend in Montana. Now, I really don't have anyone that's going to challenge me, to shake me out of my complacency. Now, I can say whatever I'm going to say about anti-racism or reproductive rights or something even remotely religiously subversive with very little fear of someone confronting me about it. I have no one to help me practice having the difficult conversations. Because if everyone that I talk to more or less agrees with me, then that ain't difficult, is it? These days it's really easy for me to say a thing I'm passionate about and hear the echoes come ringing off the walls of my social media echo chamber of support. What I find very little of is opposition, very little friction. It's in this type of environment that we can grow stagnant and complacent. A lack of challenge equals a lack of growth, and a lack of growth eventually just turns to rot. So we need to have a little bit of something in our lives that's rubbing us the wrong way. Of course, what that is and where it comes from is going to be different for everyone. What works best for me is to start off with that really, really fine sandpaper, and then you work up to the steel wool. I'm not suggesting that we go and find the most extreme example of our opposition and get up in their faces. Unless, of course, that's where you are. And if that is where you are, please be safe. We're all going to need to figure out what level of engagement works best for us. And no one can tell you what you should or should not be doing except the person that knows you the best. The one that looks you in the mirror every morning. Yeah, that one person that looks you in the mirror every morning. One time a while back, a friend of mine told me about a self-esteem building exercise, and I figured I'd give it a try. So the exercise was to look at myself in the mirror, look myself in the eye, and just be with whatever pops up. So I started doing this, and after a while, all these questions started popping up. Questions like, really, dude? Parachute pants and mullets? And why do I feel like I'm not enough? Who taught me that? And why do I still believe it? Ooh, there's an interesting emotion. And take a look at that prejudice. I wonder where that came from. How can I unlearn it? So I do this exercise pretty much every day. No, I don't actually physically sit down in front of a mirror every day, but I at least try to do it in my head. I'm constantly looking inward, unpacking and unlearning, trying to understand the history of me. So if growth and healing and true living are of no interest to me, then these are questions that I'm never going to ask myself. These are topics that are never going to arise when I stare at myself in the mirror. Now, I don't know. Maybe you're one of the minority of people that has it all figured out. that has faced adversity and come out completely unscathed, who's never had to look into the past and say, yeesh, that was a bad idea. If you happen to be one of these people, congratulations, I think. Personally, I wouldn't give up most of the things that make those questions arise. Through a lot of work and a lot of help from friends and professionals, I've been blessed to come to a point in my life where I can truly see the majority of my adversities were actually some of the most powerful teaching moments imaginable. Of course, in a heartbeat, I would delete all of the files that contain parachute pants and mullets. If I always do what I have always done, then I will always be who I've always been. This is a great reminder from the Buddhist writer Timber Hawkeye. It reminds us that if we want this precious and vital and beloved community to exist, it's not going to build itself. It needs me to reach down and look into that past that is often kind of dreadful. And when I say me, this might be a bit of a new concept for some of y'all, but I mean the global, the communal, the family of me. In other words, us. Now I know it's really hard for some of us to have a conversation with ourselves. It opens up so many scary places. Places that are often cringeworthy and horrifying when viewed through our now colored glasses. A lot of the times, the people that we were are completely different from the people that we're currently striving to be, and it's scary. We stumble over things that we were told about ourselves by others, and we trip over things that we tell ourselves about ourselves. As frightening as this exercise can be for some of us, it's probably one of the, and I would argue the, most important things that we can do. Luckily, we have all the rest of our lives to dig into this. Don't get me wrong, having these conversations with ourselves, there is a sense of urgency. After all, every moment that we aren't living our fullest lives brings us closer to the end of the current ride on the merry-go-round. And as my good friend Marnie reminds me, every second alive on this planet is an extra second. Now, we don't have to jump off the high dive and cannonball into this giant pool of terrifying. We are welcome to dip our toes in and wait for our bodies and our spirits to acclimate, and then immerse ourselves a bit more at our own pace. Now I realize that this goes against the widespread belief that personal and material accomplishments are of the utmost importance. I realize we are constantly being told our level of enough grows in direct proportion with the amount of stuff that we gain. We are told that winning is all that matters. Luckily for us, many of us have come to an understanding that successes don't necessarily have to be huge triumphs, and they certainly don't have to have anything to do with material gain. Winning for you can be something huge, like trying to socialize more, or cleaning out your garage. And in this context, I want to clarify, this can be your actual physical garage where you park your car, or it could be your mental storage space that needs decluttered. Winning could be something simple, like getting out of bed, putting on some pants, and deciding to be an adult. Or something as big as deciding to stay alive one more day. So are you going to take down racism or ableism or classism all on your own? Will you single-handedly save the rainforest and the polar bears? Will you walk up to a group of people holding signs for the cause that you know is unethical and harmful to so many? You know the answers to these. And whatever those answers are, know that this community is here to support you with however you choose to live those answers. All of the little bits of something that you do and all of the giant pieces of you that you are, they are enough. Be well and be blessed.